Mariners top prospects update here on the call up. You've got Aram, Jack, and we're dealing with a little bit of latency challenges here and there. So for those on YouTube, like this is the time of year where we're recording from family homes. So
Yeah.
just in case you see a little bit of buffering, some Mariners fans, if this is your first time seeing us out here, I promise in the future it'll be more clear.
It
But
gets
we've
better.
moved around the house. We've moved around the house a little bit. I think we found a nice little sweet spot. But this system, Jack, it's crazy because we talked about how good it was way back before, the Noel V. Marte days and all of that stuff, before the Luis Castillo trade. But the ability to reload with this farm system, we talk about a lot of others. I think it's kind of become forgotten that Jerry DiPoto and co, they can build a farm. And we saw it. They tapered off a little bit. It helps when you have 3 picks in the top 40 like they had a couple years ago. But I also think it really helps when you can nail 12th round arms like they have, and we continue to see that and also do well in international free agency, which they've started to do. All of a sudden, this Mariner system is clearly in the top third in Major League Baseball again.
Yeah, I think they are one of the premier drafting organizations in Major League Baseball. Like I do feel like that is where their bread is butter. Obviously they hit with some IFA guys. Like Celesten looks totally worth it in terms of being a big ticket IFA guy. Lazaro Montes is an IFA hit. Arroyo, same deal. But the fact that they can find guys, you mentioned in the later rounds, back half of the draft, you're not supposed to find guys after the 10th round, but they find them. And they're gonna work. That's the thing. Like they had a guy get to the big leagues that we're going to talk about that I think was a 12th round draft pick. This is what the Mariners do, man. They're really good at this draft thing.
And what I like too, you bring up a point. There's going to be one guy that we're going to mention the names to watch just because he's notable that looks like he could be a whiff in the early going, but they rarely completely whiff, right? Even if it's a guy that maybe it hasn't panned out the way they completely thought. Yeah. It seems like there's never really that complete whiff. They do a pretty good job of at least identifying. And if you look at a draft class, if they do end up, coming up a little bit shorter on the early picks, they seem to somehow always compensate for it by the later picks and having that arm later on. But I mean, even the IFA guys, if they don't totally tap into that ceiling, I feel like there's been a lot of guys that still look like they can have a big league role potentially, or at least have enough prospect intrigue for them to flip them and cash in and be able to put together some packages. Even a Ben Williamson, for example, that's a guy that, sure, there was probably some higher upside, bigger impact picks in the second round, but that's a guy that I feel very confident about at least getting to the big leagues at some point and being able to fill a bench role or something like that. So I don't know. They seem to do a good job with either the high floor arms and high floor bats when they want to go that way, but they also aren't afraid to shoot for the stars with some IFA guys and some draft guys. So it seems like a fun balance of things as well in that system. And I know Williamson will be the first name to watch that we get into with the reverse alphabetical order.
It's funny. They take calculated risks when they are risks. Like I'm thinking about a Tai Peete. They saw a guy in Farmelo that could play center field at the major league level, quickly, I think, and is going to clearly hold his own in center field in the lower minors and then, get to the upper minors. Colt Emerson, they probably saw one of the highest floor prepsters in that draft class.
Yep.
So then they hedge with a guy that could be awesome, but could not make it above high A in Tai Peete. When they take risks, they understand that it may go sideways. And that is the recipe for success. Like, that's what you do in stocks. That's what you do on Wall Street. And these guys, it seems like they're doing it well with their draft capital.
100%. I love that point too, because they seem to do the same thing with arms where, they'll take the big ticket arm, but they'll also draft guys with 8 ERAs in college, but they draft stuff and not statistics as much as any organization in baseball. And it's worked for them.
It worked with Bryce Miller. It worked with Brian Wu. Even look at their top 2 picks in the 2024 draft. One of them, high school guy, seems so polished already. Seems like the highest floor high school arm that you could possibly take. And then you grab the switch pitcher out of college, and it's like, what's
who's been pitching for 2 years?
Again, every time they take a risk, they hedge it with something that is deemed safe yet exciting as well.
Yeah, and let's just jump right into it. And like I said, Ben Williamson will be the first name here in the names to watch. You can always follow along with the link in the episode description, and then also on YouTube with us here. Jack, take it away.
I know you mentioned he was underwhelming this year, but at the end of the day, it was, I think, a 122 WRC plus this year. It's just you were expecting more from a guy that was a 4-year guy at William and Mary. He was the college safe pick after a trio of high schoolers, which is very funny. But Williamson, I think what left him out of the top 15, surely, like there are some other deficiencies, but I think what left him out is just the lack of power. It was kind of jarring. Like 12 homers at William and Mary, he really had nothing going on, and you see that concretely in 4 homers, but I feel like the EVs kind of told that story too.
Yeah, exactly. But what I like about him is he can move all over the infield. I think he's good enough defensively at third to actually play shortstop in a pinch. He can play second. So I really see this bench utility type. And as you mentioned, like that, they funneled a lot of that bonus pool money, and they also just funneled a lot of the focus and money in general and risk into that trio of high schoolers. So yeah, go for a higher floor bat that you don't have to probably worry as much about the process of signing in a Ben Williamson. And I still think like has a great chance of being able to fill that bench utility role. And I think he showed that at least this year. You mentioned the numbers still being above average. He's not going to chase a ton. He makes above average contact. And there's a chance he can grow into a little bit more power as he learns to leverage, a little bit more in his advantage counts and elevate more consistently. But the defensive ability, I think, is a really underrated part of this thing here, where third base is his primary position, but he really can move all over the infield.
Yeah. Next guy is a big league reliever, Troy Taylor, who had more than 20 appearances in the big leagues, but it was 19 and a third innings, so he still technically has prospect status. Troy Taylor figured out a 2-pitch mix that works. It's a fastball at 97, and it's a sweeper that opponents hit under 200 against in the big league sample. He was not that great at UC Irvine. Awesome in the minor leagues. They find guys like this all the time. And I mentioned here in the write-up, like he's the next piece in their bullpen machine. They always find setup guys, and a 12th round pick out of Irvine could be that next guy.
Yeah. And another guy that just, at low release with a lot of run on the fastball. So other guys, they usually get the low release, high carry guys, but still low release with the run that he's able to get. And he kind of jumps at you. This is a dude that I think is going to be a successful reliever without a doubt. Still sneaky, only 23 as well, and he'll be 23 for the entirety of the season that's coming this year. I think this is another quality bullpen arm that, as you mentioned, the Mariners just seem to be able to identify and develop.
Yep. Another guy, recent draftee, and another UC guy taken in the back half of the draft, 10th round pick out of Santa Barbara. Jared Sundstrom is 23 years old. He was older. He started at JUCO, went to Santa Barbara, was awesome in 50 games. First full season in 2024, 112 games, a 132 WRC plus. He walked 14% of the time. The thing that I love, he split his time between the 3 outfield spots like almost evenly. It was 37 games in right, 33 games in center, 30 games in left. They're grooming him to be a 4th outfielder. Like and it feels like he's got a high likelihood of doing that. He may whiff a little bit, but at the end of the day, it's a power speed combo and the ability to play all 3 outfield spots.
Good approach really helps as well. I ran a chase rate around 23%. We talk about themes and organizations. I think a couple themes you're going to see here: swing decisions, swing decisions, swing decisions throughout this org. And then on the pitcher side, a lot of low release, high carry guys clearly worked for them with Bryce Miller, Brian Wu. But there's more beyond that. And they'll mix in some other arms too, which we'll talk about, but that seems to be something that they identify well. And look, I think that's a great model. If I was running an org and identifying players, those would be 2 areas where I would absolutely be trying to identify guys who are underperforming, but check those boxes.
Your guy, Jeter Martinez, another name to watch. I know he was top 15, but he fell out because he really couldn't throw a strike this year. It sucked.
Yeah,
it was
hard to predict that.
Yeah. No, I mean, it was more than $500,000 they shelled out for him. Opponents hit 109 against him in the DSL. He came stateside. It's funny because opponents still only hit 207 against him. So, like, the stuff is still good. You just got to throw strikes.
It got worse as the year progressed, too. He's so talented, and I'm not going to give up. He's still 18, by the way. So, like, just for reference there. But, like, yeah, I was excited about him. And, man, like, I knew strike throwing would be an issue. I didn't think it would be to the degree of a 17% walk rate. And then the numbers that you're going to look at on Fangraphs don't include the 2 postseason stats or 2 postseason appearances that he made, where he threw 7 innings and walked 13 more. So it's tough. Fastball average 95 with crazy late run. He's got a banger curveball, a changeup that looks like it could be an above average pitch as well. But none of that matters if he can't throw a strike. He's 6'4" and 18 years old, so you hope that it can come along. There's been several guys throughout this org that have cut their walk rates, so you hold on to hope for that. Clearly very, very talented, probably as talented as any arm outside the top 15, but it's hard to get behind that kind of walk rate.
Have you heard of this kid Grant Knipp before?
Is it Knipp? No silent
I have
K?
no idea. Knipp. I know we've got that kid at Duke, Con Knippel, right now, so I just want to say Knipp.
Knipp. All right.
I had no idea who this guy was. He initially enrolled at Alabama, didn't play, and then played his redshirt freshman, sophomore, junior year at Campbell, and was a 6th-round pick this year. He did not pitch his first 2 years at Campbell. Then he was a reliever in his draft year. 5 2/3 innings, allowed 1 run, K'd 6, walked 1. At the plate, he missed like 2 months with a hamstring issue. 29 games, hit .402, slugged .1029, and again in 29 games, 18 homers and 46 runs driven in. It's one of the crazier college samples in that short of time that I've seen. And the fact that he was this under the radar and fell to the 6th round while being good on the mound in a limited sample and being a catcher, like, this is fascinating to me.
Campbell loves these two-way guys. Also, I've never seen a spray chart like this. I thought something was broken on my end because, dude, he had 41 hits and 18 were homers. More than 40% of his hits are home runs. How is that possible?
I don't know.
He hits the living crap out of the baseball. So this is a guy that, I mean, you texted me, you're like, I'm going to introduce you to a catcher. So I have nothing on this guy. But what I will say is 90th percentile exit velocity of 108.5 miles per hour this past year. He's swung and missed a little bit, but if this guy can be a good defensive catcher, clearly he has a good arm.
I was going to say, do you have the fastball velo there, like from his time on the mound?
Oh, 95.
There you go.
Okay, this guy's a new call-up folk hero here. Like we gotta circle him and follow him along. I mean, I would draft this guy just off of I don't know what's going to happen. Let's just throw him into our organization. He's going to turn into something. Whether it's we're talking to Sean Reynolds early next week, reliever for the Padres, who was dominant in his big league debut. Like he was drafted as a hitter, but he's a 6'8" guy that was a two-way prospect. Hit bombs from the left side. Also was up to the mid to upper 90s on the mound. Like you just draft that guy and say, okay, something's going to happen. Well, and it worked out. Right now he's a big league reliever and a good one. Like Grant, Knipp, I don't know which one it is. What we're going to find out. If it doesn't work out behind the dish, like a 95 mile per hour fastball on average, that got up to 98. Like this is a very, very, very fun guy to monitor, I think, here. And oh my gosh, I'm looking at a couple of the fastballs he's thrown here. 17 inches of vert. This is a fun player.
Yeah, I did the little dive and I was like, you're kidding me. This is a joke. Cartoonish type stuff that you found. Another guy, huge money, $3 million IFA signing, Dewell Joseph, really bad in the Dominican Summer League this year. 133, 274, 173 slash, and 150 ABs. I said grossly overmatched. I think that's probably the nicest way to put it.
Yeah, I mean, that's one of the worst slash lines. And we talk about this is what I'm talking about, where rarely do you see the Mariners whiff this bad, I think, in the last few years on the big ticket IFA guys, and just in general, I think at when they're investing into a specific player. He was just 17, I think 16 still at the start of the season, but I mean, that's not even really competitive numbers there. So it's concerning. I mean, he looked very, very overmatched, but also just he looked like a kid out there, which I know he is, but very skinny, like slow. The bat almost looked heavy at times. Hopefully he put on some weight and got himself right and can progress from there. Obviously there's tools, but I mean, it's a tough performance from a $3 million guy.
Yeah. A couple more guys. Carlos Jimenez. This is a weird thing here because he's 21 years old. He was signed to the 2020 IFA class. He was a $500,000 IFA guy. He's only 21, and he really put together his best season in 2024. But the problem is with these IFA signings, when you're 21, you're almost running out of time to figure out who they're going to be, which sucks. And he repeated the DSL and he repeated the complex. So he spent his first 3 years not getting to an affiliate, and he got to an affiliate for the back half of this year. And he was awesome when he got there. He had an 849 OPS in 53 games in low A this year at 21 years old, which is great. The problem is it took him 3 years to get there. It's one of those where I'm really curious to see how quickly he can be good in high A in 2025.
Yeah, and they have him, I think trying to make up for some lost time. He's playing for Escogido right now in the Winter League, and he's he played for them. He was 1 for 13, and I don't know if they're going to give him any more ABs after that. But swing and miss is the big concern there. Hedges that with, guess what? Very low chase rate, sub 20%, and does elevate the ball pretty well. So it's an interesting profile in terms of the batted ball quality and things like that. But yeah, I agree with you. Like, it's going to be a challenge for him, and he's going to have to rise to it. He doesn't have much more time to have adjustment periods, I think, at each of those spots. I mean, obviously, he could be a late bloomer, things like that, but he'd be a Rule 5 eligible guy that probably wouldn't be unprotected. And once that happens, the intrigue kind of dissipates a bit.
Yeah. 2 more. Last pitcher in the names to watch. Ashton Izzy is a guy. It's funny. Like, do you know much of the Cam Newton Auburn recruiting story? He was at Blinn Junior College after the whole University of Florida thing, the laptops and all that.
The laptop
Auburn
situation.
Auburn was apparently there to scout a wide receiver. And they were like, oh, damn, the quarterback's pretty good too. Izzy was a rotation mate with Noah Schultz at Oswego East High School in the Chicago suburbs. So it's like, oh, I'm here to see Schultz, stay the next day and see Izzy. This guy, it's a 2-pitch mix right now. But his age 20 season, 111 innings at a 2.85 ERA. I was not expecting him to eat innings like that. And it's a fastball slider combo that does feel like a big league combination in some form or fashion.
Yeah, he gets above average vert, borderline plus vert on the heater, which helps him get a lot of end zone whiff. Slider's good as well. He mixes in a sinker to get some ground balls and a cutter. Seems like he could absolutely at least be a depth arm. Definitely one of the better names to watch here as well. And he's a big dude that I think still has, like, in terms of frame, like, he's got room to add more strength. He's kind of wiry and 6'3". I think for an age 20 season, it was a pretty darn good one. Opponents hit just 195 against his 4-seamer last year. It's just the command needs to come along.
Yep. Last name to watch, Ryan Bliss. You probably know all about him at this point. He was in the big leagues for 71 plate appearances. It didn't go too well, but frankly, like, who cares? Because I feel like he is best experienced and enjoyed over the course of a full season. He's stolen 50 or more bases in back-to-back seasons in the minor leagues. And I'm leaning into that because his first bit of pro ball, he was, he's going to steal 30 bags. There's a big difference between 30 and 50. You can make a big league roster if you're swiping 50 bags and you're playing a good second base, and that's what he can do.
Yeah, and I think he could be a second division regular, but he is another awesome utility piece that could plug in if you need for a couple months if someone goes down for a prolonged amount of time, and you're not worried about it because he hits the ball hard enough, he walks, he gives you the speed and the defensive versatility. But I think as soon as this coming season, like, he could be a really solid bench piece. You think of what Dylan Moore has done for the Mariners for a while. Like, there's no reason why Bliss can't do that with maybe a little bit less impact, but honestly, I think it could be pretty close, to be honest. So I think he could absolutely fill that, like, Dylan Moore type of role that, we saw over the last few years, which is really valuable, especially for a Mariners team that, has dealt with some injuries through the years, especially like, JB Crawford being banged up, but also, like, they can stagnate so much with the offense that it's just nice to be able to put in a bench player who, isn't your traditional, like, bench player that you don't want in the lineup. Like, he could kind of be a spark if he's hot at the right time.
They're also in, like, year 4 of trying to find a second baseman. Didn't work with Colton Wong, didn't work with Jorge Polanco, didn't work before that. So, hey, you know what? Try it again internally. The cheap option.
I mean, I'd rather that than go pay Gleyber Torres or something. And I'm hoping they don't do that.
Yeah.
We're going to get into the top 15, which starts with Teddy McGraw, one of the Jack McMullen favorites, who we actually got to see throw this year a little bit. So excited to update on that front. But before that, our first break. All right, Teddy McGraw. It was so nice to see him back and throwing. And McGraw is a guy that I know really captured your attention at Wake Forest before unfortunately needing to undergo a second Tommy John surgery. Now, I think the looking at and focused on, we only got 8 2/3 innings from McGraw. but still does he look like he's moving like Teddy McGraw of before? And of course, velocity is going to be another thing that you're looking at. But I think it was more so just does the arm still look like it's loose and fluid, and does he just look like he still feels like himself? Because after 2 elbow surgeries like that, and combined almost 3 years off, if you combine the time between those 2 surgeries, obviously they weren't back to back, but it's a long time to not pitch in a span of several years. I felt like there was a chance he could come back and just not totally feel like himself. He looked like himself, short spurt, but he looked like himself. The velocity was there. He averaged 95 miles per hour in those 8 2/3 innings, albeit shorter spurts, but he went 3 innings in his second to last outing and a pair of innings. And the last one threw 40 pitches in each of those. I mean, this is a guy that's going to get ground balls. And we know that's a heavy fastball, a good slider. And I am really excited to see what he can do this upcoming season. And my fingers are crossed for him that he can stay healthy, because this guy's worked his butt off to get back.
Yeah, I think the reason he's probably in the top 15 now is because we actually, saw him pitch just a little bit. And that's all that needs to happen with he can be. And he has to prove that, he's even close to what he was at Wake, because he was a borderline first-round talent at Wake. Unfortunately, we traded him to the Dodgers already on the Just Baseball show. And then Gavlock Steele to second baseman. But Teddy McGraw is a guy that it feels like he is a long shot, because it's always a long shot. You're not going to find a Bryce Miller, Brian Wu if it's not a long shot. But it feels like he could fit that billing next, where the data makes too much sense to the point that, like, okay, how did he get to the Mariners in the 3rd round? Like 91 guys were taken before him.
Yeah. And I love the calculated risk there too, because remember they had to make the money work for the 3 guys that they took at the top. And not only do they get this upside arm, they saved 20% of that slot value by signing him to a $600,000 bonus, which was a chunk below what that 92nd overall pick would have commanded. So I really like McGraw, at least as a depth arm, because of his ability to get ground balls and in that slider. But there's always a chance he can develop into a back end of the rotation starter. I'm sure they'll manage his innings this coming season, and the Mariners are really good. I love the way the Mariners go about managing innings. They don't shut you down. They don't put you on the dev list. They'll keep you throwing, and they just shorten your spurts. And I know more orgs are doing that, but the Mariners have been really committed to that. And it seems to be working for them. Like they do seem to have their arms progressing nicely and being able to get up to the big leagues and stick there. And I'm glad McGraw's in a situation here where I feel like the Mariners have a little bit better of a feel for their arms maybe than some of the other organizations.
No doubt.
14 is Tai Peete. And, this is a fall for him a little bit.
Yeah.
It's not as much of a knock on Tai Peete as it is like the players ahead of him, who I really like. I think every player ahead of Tai Peete, in the 11 to 13 range that we're going to talk about before entering the top 10, are all big leaguers. So, with Pete, you're comparing a guy that has the upside that's probably higher than a couple of the names that we're going to talk about. But as you mentioned, there's a chance that he doesn't even make it work in high A, double A. So for that reason, I went with some of the closer proximity, big league guys, guaranteed, big league role guys, at least close to it, than a Tai Peete who, I'll be honest, he flashed some things that, you could see the talent, but there's a lot of unknown here still where, we still don't really know what his defensive position is. And I think that's a really big part of this whole thing. Like, where is he going to play defensively? I put outfield because I think ultimately that's where he projects best. He made a lot of 27 errors and 84 starts in the infield this year between shortstop and third base. Yeah. It just didn't look good.
I mean, dude, that's an unfathomable number of errors. And correct me if you feel like there's been a crazier road to a 100 WRC plus, but I'm not sure if there was a wackier one. Like, you talk about the fight back to even if you're sitting at the roulette table, like the fight back to an 100 WRC plus with a 31% K rate, and you look like this. Like, I mean, he's tooled out. That's so clear, but it's like the most frustrating 100 WRC plus you've ever seen.
Yeah, it was an interesting video dive, like different setup, a lot of, I felt like every few weeks I'd see a different setup, some different moves in the box, and that's fine. He was 18 years old at the start of the season, trying to just find it. He was a two-way guy in high school, all that good stuff. But, you saw a guy that was trying to find it offensively and then clearly trying to find it defensively. And you're drafting the tools and you're projecting the tools, and there's a lot of fun things there. There's above average power potential. He's a plus runner. He's got the arm. But when I'm still trying to figure out his defensive home and I'm still trying to, figure out if he's going to be able to hit enough. It's just not a guy that I think can be ranked ahead of, some of the other guys that we have ahead of him. But, that's still to say, like, he's a fun project. It's going to be interesting to see how he bounces back next year. He did show some better things at the end of the year, but a 60% contact rate's just not going to fly for a guy like him. So he's going to need to figure that out. Very much has the tendency to fly open with the front side and kind of bail out. But there's some little things there that maybe he shores up, and that lightning bat speed that we've seen when he's right, could start to shine through a little more.
For sure.
13. This is a guy that I didn't have a ton of familiarity with until, I knew the numbers and whatever, but didn't really dive into the arsenal until we updated the system. Brandyn Garcia, like he gets the edge. Floor obviously higher, ceiling probably a little bit more limited, but a left-handed pitcher who had a phenomenal year between high A and double A. And another just example of the Mariners doing what they do, right? They take him in the 11th round in 2023. And so when he gets up to the big leagues on Baseball Savant, I can promise you his extension is going to be ice blue. It's going to be first percentile. But I don't think it matters because I think that plays into his deception. He looks like he's legitimately playing catch with you. Like, does not get down on the mound that much in terms of like really pushing off. And he throws almost what it looks like from behind him. And it's a short arm delivery, but it whips around at like 17, 18 degrees, which is, would you say that's 3/4 or low 3/4, or is that sidearm? Like 18 degrees. I can't do it with my left arm yet. But like right over here, it's like low 3/4.
It's somewhere. I don't know. It's not sidearm, because sidearm, I feel like you can see that consciously, because this is still his natural throw. Like sidearm, I feel like is nobody's natural throw. Nobody does it. But if I'm not mistaken, isn't Ryan Walker and a guy like that, isn't he at 18 degrees? Now, obviously his torso is shading it more, but it's almost like you're trying to rip it across glove side. Like that's what I get from his delivery.
Yeah, and when it's shorter and behind you like that, I think it actually plays into it, because it's this like whip around that is really difficult to see, and it's a heavy sinker from there. So left on left, good luck, because you're getting a sinker running into you, and then his best pitch is a slider with good sweep, and then he also has a gyro cutter that helps him spell righties. But why I like him so much is, one, they were using him as a starter, and like he could be. I think he's the perfect kind of swingman type. They managed his innings carefully because he was not good in college at all, to the point that I don't think he really threw more than like 50 innings in any collegiate season. And then this past year, he threw 116. So when he got to double A, they tempered him down to about 3 inning spurts. But he was then ticking up to like 95, 96, but was mostly 94, 95 for most of the year. Lefties posted a 29% K minus BB rate against lefties. So it's like a 31% strikeout rate and like a 2% walk rate. So that floor is so high because that you can at least weaponize him against lefties. But the fact that he has this gyro cutter that also works against righties, I think this is the epitome of a swingman that you can use in a lot of different spots. You could deploy him in a lefty heavy part of a lineup, but then if you end up wanting to, preserve your bullpen a little bit more, you can leave him in there against the righties as well. And I think he's got a shot to be able to keep them at bay too. But righties between high A and double A last year had hardly over a 600 OPS. So mid-90s fastball from a funky release, slider that's disgusting off of that, and a gyro cutter that gives him a third look. The command is okay, but it got better as the year progressed. This is a guy that I think is going to be a weapon for the Mariners this coming season.
Can I make a bet with you?
Yes.
I bet you that his primary focus this offseason is figure out a way to pronate just a little bit or kill a little bit of that supination, because from that slot and that throw, a changeup or a splitter would be blitzball. It would be disgusting. And if he can find anything that lands in the strike zone that turns his wrist just a little bit the other way, I mean, that could make him a complete arm.
Yeah, I 100% agree. And the big problem was just he couldn't locate it. But if he can find that, he could then be a back end starter and one that flashes some disgusting stuff. So talented arm that I know is just going to fill a role one way or another for the Mariners.
Yeah.
Number 12, another guy that I think it's less of an indictment on him and more of just a testament to the other prospects who have kind of leapfrogged him and another strong draft from the Mariners. Tyler Locklear. Wasn't quite the year that I think people were hoping when Tyler Locklear had the start to the season that he had. But this is a guy that still looks like he can fill a big league role for them this coming season. I think he's going to get more ABs depending on what they do in free agency. But Locklear has been a guy that just has continued to post big time EVs, but has struggled to translate that into consistent game power. He has hit, home runs, 15 to like 18 a year, and he'll hit some doubles. But, I think his operation in the box makes it really hard to consistently elevate and consistently be on time. We talk about the barrel tip and where his hands are. It's not even a barrel. It's like a bat wag, and it's a lot going on. He's tempered it down a little bit, but I still think it's difficult to manage where he starts everything. And I think that's resulted in him putting the ball on the ground more consistently than you'd like to see. But his 90th percentile was up last year to 107 miles per hour, 90th percentile exit velocity. And he's a fine first baseman. So I don't know if he's going to be able to hit enough to be an everyday first baseman, but this could be like a platoon power bat. It's definitely a guy that should get opportunity when needed. And I think a good reserve option could be a second division regular at first base. But the EVs are too gaudy, and the approach is fine. It did kind of unravel a little bit in AAA and then in the bigs. But there's enough here to dream on a regular. I just think with how much pressure there is on the bat, it's hard for me to rank him much higher.
It's not funny for Tyler Locklear, but the situation I think is funny because my frustration with the big club has almost made me sour on Locklear, because I look at Locklear now as you're a big league ready first baseman. You shouldn't be the answer for Seattle. Like, there are plenty of other situations where I'm like, oh, just plug in Tyler Locklear, like, see what he can do. I love it. But with Seattle, it's like, no, you need to figure out a way to hit, because you guys as a collective unit are not hitting. Yeah, you need somebody better, but I would kill for this guy to be that lefty master on my bench. It's a pinch hitter, can fill in at DH, can fit at first base. And I think that's what he's going to be for Seattle this year. Say they Naylor DHs and Locklear plays first base, and I'm happy with that.
100%. And that's the thing is, he has a year of, I know you want to get him to get consistent at bats and things like that, but I think you give him a year just to be in the big leagues and get acclimated there. And even if it's part-time role, this could be a guy that ends up fully blossoming in his second, third year. I mean, we see it all the time, like a Ryan O'Hearn and, just some of these other first base types that you don't get the clear-cut runway. But I think this is a guy that, could blossom more as he gets more big league experience. But there's no way, if you're the Mariners at such a premium position, you can just roll the dice on Tyler Locklear when they need offense in a lot of different ways.
Here's the comp. Like, he's exactly what I wanted Gavin Sheets to be, and it didn't work. But like, do you remember the process of Gavin Sheets where it was, hey, he gets up, he'll play occasionally, he'll spell Vaughn, he'll spell, whoever. And then he can figure it out in year 3, and we're happy with this. Unfortunately, he never really figured it out, but he showed those flashes where it's like, wow, Sheets might be a guy in a year or 2. Like, there was that optimism around Sheets, and I have a similar optimism with Locklear. So don't take that as a knock on Locklear.
No, it's the rest of his development can be had at the big league level, and I think he could fill a role and run into some baseballs.
Yeah.
Number 11. I think this is one of the bigger climbers in this system. I know some people probably already ranked him somewhat high going into the season just because of his draft intrigue. Michael Morales, third rounder in 2021, who got $1.5 million to sign away from Vanderbilt. However, I think in terms of what he showed this year, I don't know if there were any arms outside of like Logan Evans that really, I think, elevated themselves to this degree. I mean, Morales did back-to-back years in low A Modesto, and the numbers were not great. And then this year, he adds a cutter. He gains a feel for his entire arsenal. And he not only does he mow through high A, he gets up to double A and holds his own. And this is still a young arm as a prepster and a cold weather guy as well. The fastball limits him. There's no doubt about that. Like, it's a low 90s, though it does have slightly above average carry from a slightly, flatter VAA. So it helps it play up a little bit. But he has the arsenal around it to, I think, be that 4-pitch guy or 5-pitch guy, who commands his stuff and can just get through lineups, change his looks, and grab onto a number 5 spot in a rotation. The slider was really good this year. It's a true sweeper. And then he has a changeup that flashes above average as well and came along more and more as the season progressed and looked like it could be a pretty nasty pitch. He gets 16 inches of horizontal with it, with like 13 inches of vertical separation. So that changeup, I think, could end up flashing closer to plus if he continues to hone in on the command of it. Adding that cutter, I think, was huge. He has that slow curve to steal strikes early in counts, early in ABs. I think this is a high probability depth arm who could potentially be a 5-starter or a strong 5 option or maybe a fringe 4.
I love watching him pitch because it's loose, but it's rhythmic at the same time. And he's got that overhead wind, but he almost like, I'm sure you saw it, like he rocks forward and then back. He times up a sway better than most. And if you sway, you better have it timed up, because otherwise you're leaving a ton of meat on the bone when it comes to velocity, or you're leaving a ton of meat on the bone when it comes to repeatability and overall command. But it seems like he times it right every time. And his frame helps with that. But it's just so in control and loose. You talk about playing catch. Like that, it feels like he's kind of doing that, and he's just in the backyard, like, pitching to somebody sitting on a paint bucket. He was awesome to end the year as well. I've got the game log in front of me here. Like, last 2 starts of the year in September, 12 innings, 5 hits, 10 Ks, and 1 walk. He was great to tie a bow on it.
And in double, man, like he punched out 12 in a double-A outing. And I mean, this is a guy that was 21 years old at the start of the season, reaching double-A, prior to his 22nd birthday. It's really impressive. I think the big reason why he finished so strong was that improved feel for the changeup that, again, started to really look like a plus pitch. Looked like it could be his best pitch if it continues to come along. But you mentioned the command. That was a big part of this whole thing as well. Cut his walk rate to 6%. But over his final 10 starts, that walk rate was below 4%. That's what he's got to be a successful arm at the big league level. Is you can't give away any free passes. You limit the damage, and you can end up being a solid innings eater at the highest level.
Yep.
We're going to get into the top 10 here with Harry Ford. And I know I can already hear the Mariners fans saying, whoa. Why is Harry Ford way down there? I saw a bunch of questions about him in the, not quite cracking the top 100 at the end of the season update. Help me along here, Jack, because I'm just trying to imagine what the role is, and I'm struggling a little bit, and that's why he's here. And again, he's not 10th in a lot of other systems. Remember, they just drafted Jurrangelo Cijntje. They just drafted Ryan Sloan, 2 of the best arms, 2 of the better arms in the draft. So those guys I just have ahead of him. Naturally, that's going to drop him 2 spots. And then we'll talk about a couple others like Logan Evans and his performance. So just naturally, people see 10 and probably like, holy crap. It's not fully a dock on Ford as much as it is a little bit of the rest of the system getting strong. That said, there is a dock on Ford to a degree, because this was the year where I think I was hoping to see a little bit more of what he could be. He has improved a ton as a blocker. He cut the 20 pass balls down to 5. That's great. His receiving has come along where I think he's fine in that regard. But catch and throw wise, he's going to struggle to limit the run game. And I watched a lot of that, and that's limiting to a degree. I think he's still a fringy defensive catcher overall. So you have that side of it. Then approach wise, fantastic, right? That's his bread and butter. The plate discipline is unbelievably good. 70 plate discipline. But the power he's an outslug the EVs guy who, as he's gotten to more challenging levels, has struggled to, I think, do that to the same degree. His margin for error is thin because his contact rates have always been fringy. So you have fringy contact rates, fringy EVs, and then a guy that's not really a great defender at catcher. I think the only way for him to, and not the only way, obviously he can make a leap, he's still young, but I think that the most reasonable way for him to, carve out a consistent big league role is that David Fry archetype, which is, remember, no one paid attention to David Fry until he forced them to at the big league level. He played a lot more left field at the end of the year, and I think that's going to be an important wrinkle in this thing. His speed needs to be utilized more. He's still 30 plus bags this year. I think it's super valuable if he can also catch and also play left field and walk a lot at the bottom of your order and provide, that value. Maybe he develops into a guy that can end up plugging into center. but I think defensive versatility is going to need to be his edge. Because right now, aside from plate discipline, I don't, and of course speed, but that's not enough. I'm struggling to find what like the clear cut roster value edge would be for him, unless he makes a huge leap defensively as a catcher or can lean into that versatility. Because the offensive side of things, I think he can be fine. I don't think he's going to be an impact bat.
Yeah. So like the natural follow-up question for somebody that is like, oh, how is he this low? Show, like, to your point, show me the big league caliber tool that he has aside from walking.
Speed.
There's not one.
And you can't count speed though. Like
You
that's
can't
always
count
just
speed.
that's the cherry on top.
Yeah, sure, but it's not like he's a 70 runner. He's a 60 runner. There are plenty of 60 runners in minor league baseball. There's 60 runners in high A that are not going to get to double A. Like you can't count it. So it's like, okay, what are you going to do that makes you a top 100 prospect aside from walk a lot? And the answer right now is, I don't know. I think the other answer before this was, oh, he's so young. Like, okay, we have 3 years of a sample in major league or in a minor league baseball of him. So, you're waiting on a tool to show big league, and unfortunately, it just hasn't really yet. It feels like a similar conversation to Kevin Alcantara in Chicago, where you're waiting, you're sold on this, you're waiting, you're sold on this, you're waiting. At some point, you got to see it. And we just haven't seen it yet, unfortunately. And I think that the comp is probably the best way to contextualize that. It was Dalton Varsho coming into this year, and now it's David Fry. And Fry was an all-star. Varsho has not been. But Varsho is more valuable because he is a platinum glove level talent in the outfield, and he's got juice. David Fry has big league capable tools. But before that, it was, okay, it's not like you do anything exceptionally well. You just play catcher and the outfield. And I think that's where Ford is right now, unfortunately.
And Fry had to really see things click offensively at the highest level to then, have the opportunities that he's having. And, Ford is going to get more
at the highest level. Right. Like he needed a situation to get him there. And then once he proved it offensive production wise, he's stuck at the highest level.
Exactly. And I think like Ford, he's going to get more runway and get more opportunity in that regard, but he's going to have to get up there and hit a little bit. And my biggest concern is, plate discipline's generally one of the things that will regress to a degree at the big league level because the stuff's better. And also, okay, great, you don't chase. Well, when pitchers find out that Harry Ford hit 216 with a 621 OPS against 93 plus this past year, if that continues, okay, you're selective. I'm going to go right after you with four seamers at the top. He drops his hands kind of low. He barrel tips a bit. I don't think that's as much of the issue as he has a big forward move. He switched from a leg kick to a toe tap, I think, to be more ready for velocity. But in turn, that toe tap actually is not keeping him back the same way that the leg kick did. So he's shifting forward, and that causes the velocity to just get on him even quicker. He gets crowded. I saw a lot of heavy sinkers or like late running sinkers tie him up, sword him up, and I think that's because of that forward move. So he has time to clean it up and things like that, but. And like you said with Alcantara, it's similar because he's so naturally talented that he's still putting up good numbers at each stop. Like it's not bad numbers, but when you're trying to project it to a big league level, if it's fringy contact rates, if it's fringy EVs, and the numbers are bolstered in this case by approach, what's going to be the separator that makes you valuable at the big league level? And it's going to need to be that defensive versatility. If nothing else makes a huge leap.
Right.
Number 9, Michael Arroyo. And this is more of an instance of, another guy that climbed. And then I just think the rest of the system is so darn good that Arroyo comes up a little bit short here compared to where he'd probably be ranked in other systems. But also there's another guy that second baseman has to mash. He's a 5'7", 5'8" second baseman. Unique profile considering the fact that he destroys everything but four seamers. Like I haven't really seen a discrepancy like this. It reminds me of Davis Schneider, to be honest, and I think there are some similarities there offensively. But Arroyo against non-four seamers, so all secondaries and sinkers, 1,032 OPS. Arroyo against four seamers, 220 with a 763 OPS. It's partially because he closes himself off a little bit when he lands, and it's a big barrel tip as well. And so he creates this path that is very deep behind him. And he really snaps the barrel behind him. It's a deep, deep, deep like swing path. So he's able to elevate with a ton of consistency, 36% ground ball rate. However, I think that can also make it difficult to turn around, four seamers with carry at the top. So his contact rate against four seamers, I believe, was like 60%. In zone contact rate was 65%. But then his contact rate against like everything else was about 13 points higher. So it's interesting in that regard. But this guy is another outslug the EVs type that I think is just going to be able to pull enough balls in the air in the right environment to hit 20 to 25 home runs. Yeah. But fringy defense at second base, not a lot of value beyond that. Plate discipline helps a ton here because it's going to be power and walks. If he hits 20 to 25 and walks, like that's a everyday second baseman. Yes. But he's got to do that, right? And that's tough.
That's the thing. It's like, okay, I mean, mash until proven otherwise, and he hasn't not mashed yet. He was one of the best hitters in minor league baseball this year. So it's like, you said second baseman that has to mash. Well, he did. So, we'll see what he does next year, and then we'll see what he does the year after that. And, if he keeps on mashing, then, so be it. But he's definitely a top 10 prospect in pretty much every organization in Major League Baseball. And this is, like you mentioned off the top, one of the better ones. But like second baseman, that's 5'8", 160, and he's probably what now, 195, 200 at this point.
Yeah, I don't know. I didn't want to make up a weight for him, but I couldn't get a weight anywhere.
He's not 160. So I promise he's not 160.
Yeah, I just put what everybody else had then.
Yeah,
but I saw another outlet that still had him at 140.
No, come on. It's just insane. Again, we measure these guys when they're 16. We don't measure them until they get to the big leagues. But Michael Arroyo, yeah, I mean, with the top end talent in this Mariners system, unfortunately, you can't shove a guy that had a 910 OPS any higher, but he was awesome.
Yeah. And I mean, again, like this is a dude that, because of the four seam concerns, but how good he is against secondaries, when he gets to Double-A and sees a lot more four seamers with carry and shows that he can still remain productive and handle those, this is a guy that's going to catapult for me. It's just it's hard when it's all bat and it's bat first, second base, and he has this deficiency of the pitch that he's going to see the most as he climbs and see more and more and see executed better at those more challenging levels. I think he can respond to it. It's a pretty fixable thing for a 19, 20-year-old if it's a mechanical side of things and not just the ability to be quick enough and recognize. So if he's able to do that, like he's going to fly. He's going to fly up the rankings for me, but that's why I'm a little bit maybe more apprehensive than others in the industry. But I think he had a great year and definitely elevated himself.
Got you.
We're going to get into a trio of really fun arms, including a breakout Logan Evans. But before that, one more quick break. Number 8, Logan Evans. This is the breakout guy in the system. 12th round pick in 2023 as well. I mean, what this guy did this past year, really coming out of nowhere. Another guy that had horrible numbers in college, 5.88 ERA as a senior at Pittsburgh, and doing what he did this past year. I mean, 3.2 ERA in more than 100 innings. He looked so good out of spring training that they signed him straight to Double-A, and he rose right to the occasion. It is good stuff across the board. Nothing totally jumps out. I think the curveball is the plus pitch, but above average fastball, above average slider, a cutter that's at least average. Changeup is the one pitch that's kind of a distant last one, and he might end up just kind of scrapping that. Doesn't really need it because he's got the fastball, slider, curveball, and cutter, and the fastball is good against both handedness. Big dude. I think the only thing that I'm really looking at for him to be able to secure that number 4 profile starter is the command. It's still a little bit like inconsistent at times, but it's hard to have command when you got like that arsenal working in all different directions and things like that. This is a guy that, I mean, when you look at their situation now, Emerson Hancock's kind of been that, okay, we have this super rotation. If someone misses a start or Brian Wu gets scratched in the second inning or whatever, like Emerson Hancock was kind of the guy that you plug in. Logan Evans should be that guy and probably will be that guy next year. They also tapered his innings well in the middle of the year. They had him go in relief a little bit, and then he went back into being stretched out again at the end of the year, and the velo never tapered off at all. this guy's a dog.
Yeah, no doubt. And I mean, it seems like they're relatively comfortable moving a Luis Castillo. It doesn't seem like they want to move Gilbert or Kirby or Miller or Wu, and I don't blame
And
you
they
because
shouldn't.
you've got control. But like they shouldn't. And my honest thought is they shouldn't even move Castillo. They should lean into their strength, and they should, again, run back the best starting rotation in baseball and just try and figure out the offense. But if they do end up moving a Castillo, because he does cost some money, and the Mariners would like to save some money, why can't Evans and Hancock, attack that 5 spot hand in hand? Like, why can't they do it together? And Evans, like if Hancock is good at the start of the year, you just roll with him. But if not, Evans is there ready to just handle it. They have to feel comfortable with their depth, and I'm sure that he is a big factor in them feeling comfortable and moving at Castillo.
No doubt. And I love just the kitchen sink approach that he gives you. Like he's impossible to game plan for because it's 25% sinker, it's 22% curve, it's 16% cutter, it's 12% four seamer, it's 11% slider, 10% changeup, and he'll sprinkle in a slow curve to steal strikes. Like he is going to like, and we talk about it's like Javier Assad with all the sliders turned up. And right where every pitch is like either a half grade or a full grade better. So then it comes down to execution. And if he's executing, he's a clear cut number 4 for me, maybe even a little bit better than that. But I think that execution is going to be a little inconsistent. And that's what puts him kind of at that 4-ish average 4 starter with flashes and more than that when he's on. And we've seen like some starts when he's on, it's dominance. And he had some dominant starts and dominant stretches through the season. So Evans is a guy that I think is going to grab some innings at the big league level this coming season, and unfortunately that's how it goes. Like guys are going to go down and you're going to need, you're going to need spot starts and things like that. But this is a guy that I think in the next year or two will very clearly, be I think a rotation piece for them is potentially, one or two of the arms move on or however it goes in free agency. Eventually I don't have the entire, roster resource in front of me in terms of how many years each guy has, but I think he is the next man up for sure. And, I don't even know if there's a guy they necessarily want to trade because of the control and how high the control years wise and how high the floor seems to be with him stuff wise. Even if he is a 40 to 45 command, the full arsenal and the ability to get ground balls when he needs them. That sinker picked up like a near 60% ground ball rate. I think just makes him a higher floor arm.
Yeah,
another arm, and we're in a trio here. Jurrangelo Cijntje. This was a little bit of a surprise just because I think he was expected to go a tad later, but this also allowed them to go get Ryan Sloan, and we're about to talk about as well. But Cijntje, he was a switch pitcher and switch hitter and a guy that didn't really focus on pitching until like the last couple of years. Low release, high carry. I know that's a big reason from the right side. I know that's a big reason why the Mariners were in on him. The slider is gross. And I think that's it. Like he already has a plus fastball slider combination. The curveball, as the year progressed, started to look more and more like a separate third pitch. It was blending in the early part of the year with the slider. It was a distinct third pitch later on, and then really performed well over the final handful of starts. And the changeup from a shape perspective, he flashed some really good ones, but it still is a work in progress for him. Makes sense. He throws with 2 arms and he hasn't been pitching that long. Right. I think from the left side, I wonder if this is even worth pursuing, to be honest. And it's not a knock on him. I think he's so good from the right side. And I understand that it's arm health, but like you got your obliques and you've got your lower half and you got like, is it worth taxing Cijntje to try to get a depth arm from the left side when you can have a mid rotation arm from the right side? Like the velocity is diminished from the left side. The fastball shape is much diminished. It's a sinker kind of slider combination. I think he could be a lefty specialist or a depth arm from the left side, but from the right side, I see like a middle rotation arm with 3 above average pitches, 2 clear plus pitches, and a changeup that could come along and give him, a 4th quality pitch. I think the command's going to come along more and more as well, just as he gets more experience on the mound and learns his body, and because he's so athletic.
You can get very creative with Jurrangelo Cijntje, I think. And I wonder if they do lean into that creativity. It doesn't feel like, the clear-cut 2-way thing where oh, we have this opportunity. If Cags is going to be a volatile reliever, there's no point in pursuing pitching because his ceiling is so much higher as a hitter. Same with Bryce Eldridge. If Bryce Eldridge you viewed as a depth arm, it's not really worth it because he could be an all-star caliber first baseman. With Cijntje, I feel like it's different because it's not like he's picking up a bat. From the right side, that's who he's going to be. And you mentioned the mid-rotation upside. But the left side, it feels like there are a couple of avenues that you can go down. Number one is you see a guy over the course of your start that is terrible against lefties, like brutal platoon splits. That's when you flip around. And he did it at Mississippi State. Like he went right on left. More, like, I don't want to say more often than not because I don't have the concrete numbers in front of me, but he went right on left a decent bit. He would only flip to the left side if it was like, okay, this guy just can't touch anything from the left side, or I can do something from the left side that this guy can't handle. So that's avenue one. Avenue two, and I have no idea how this works fatigue-wise, but why couldn't he give you an inning from the left side if you feel like the matchup is good 2 days after his start from the right side? Like, I feel like there is an endurance thing here and there's a workload thing that he could handle, and he could be a swingman where he's a traditional starter from the right side and a spot lefty occasionally, or you could do the platoon split. I feel like that's the way more realistic one.
Yeah, and what I do like to that point is it's a little bit of a more horizontal release from the left side, and he does have a pretty good slider from there. So like if it's sinker slider from that left side and he can just go left on left against a guy who just, like I'm thinking like a Jesus Sanchez who just has no shot against lefties, but can catch up to
like
velo from the right side.
Yeah.
You just go slider, slider, slider. See ya. So
yes,
that could make sense. I'm very interested to see how they go about it. But from the right side, I think that should be the priority because he could be, again, like a strong number 3 option. He's so physically gifted. He can spin the heck out of the ball and gets crazy ride, I think, from a low release point. Like it is which is funny. He's a natural lefty. It's way more natural the way he spins the ball from the right side. But yeah, if he can find that slider, even more so from the left side, I think it could be a really fun combination and way to approach things.
Did I read he started throwing righty because he wanted to wear his dad's glove? I think I read that. It was like his dad was a righty. His dad was a pro baseball player in the Netherlands, and he I'm blanking on where I saw the article, but I'll find it and cite the source. But it was fascinating. He was like, yeah, I just want to put on my dad's glove and throw with it. And that's why he started throwing righty.
I love stories like that. And it's amazing that he could so naturally spin it from the right side when he was not even naturally lefty. And it's a really cool story in general. And it does kind of help his body have good symmetry and things like that. So there's some value to just even continuing to throw pens from the left side. And, if they want to do it, they can, but just know that they've got it in the holster. But it can at least, kind of help with the body balance and things like that. But the natural talent here with Cijntje is really impressive. And I think he's a guy that could really turn a lot of heads this year. On to number 6, and a guy that I believe is not too far from your original stomping grounds where he grew up pitching as well, right? Ryan Sloan, right-hander. Shout out to the Illinois talent that Jack is always reminding me, don't sleep on. And he is right. He is right. Second round pick, but got $3 million, which is equivalent to essentially it's like $10,000 or $20,000 short of 29th overall pick money. Big priority, I think, for the Mariners in this past draft class, and limited looks compared to some of the other guys, right? Like Cijntje, I got to watch every single college start this past year, but Sloan, this guy has such a natural feel to pitch for a 6'4", 220-pound kid from a cold weather area. I mean, heavy fastball. It's also what I like about him is 6'4", but releases from like a 5'3" release point. That's super unique. Remember, average release height for any pitcher is 5'9", but then to be that low for a guy that's that tall makes it even more of a unique and deceptive angle. And then on top of that, crazy feel for his secondary. So that's what ended up having him a little bit ahead of Cijntje for me is slider already looks like a plus pitch. I watched him rip 16, 17 inches of horizontal and no vert. It was like 0 and 17 sliders that were just devastating. And then a good feel for a changeup already at his age with his like archetype, wild. I think between the combination of being able to get ground balls, a unique release, a disgusting slider, and already a good feel for a changeup, This guy could be an absolute monster.
It just seems like there's a ridiculous amount of polish for a teenager here, and like not something you see often. And like it's funny, like a Bobby Miller and a Reed Detmers walked. So Owen Murphy and a Noah and an Izzy and a Ryan Sloan could run. Like it's that Chicagoland suburb, baby. Stand up for it. But I mean, it's so mechanically sound. You mentioned the feel for literally everything. I know it's a 35 present, 50 future on the command, but when you watch him throw, when you watch how he moves down the mound, doesn't it seem like he's been doing it for 20 years?
Yes. Yeah, I would say that the only reason why it's 35 present is because he's a high school arm, and he's a 6'4" high school arm who, when I was watching, like the fastball at times, like the arm could get a little behind him, and I think that's because of the unique release where that could cause it to kind of spray arm side at times. But I mean, he at very least is going to have average command. I think it could be even a little bit better than that. That's like the plate discipline grade when I'm not able to see guys too much.
Yeah,
I was able to see each pitch in a vacuum, but I only in couple inning, 1 to 2 inning spurts. It's really hard to give a clear cut command grade. So that's the part that's hard to tell. But the feel for the secondaries is like a guy that's been pitching for a long time. You just don't see. He can really spin the baseball.
Yeah. Our guys on the Marine Laird, Lyle and TJ, they had Sloan on, and it was funny. Like, obviously, okay, polish. You've got this. You threw 99. Like, you're a big kid. You see the measurables. He's 6'4", 220. It was so funny just like watching it on YouTube. Like, he looks 15 years old, but the fact is, like, he might be a babyface killer for Seattle in due time here. It's such an advanced look. And I feel like there's, a lot of intrigue with Cijntje, and, it was a pleasant surprise with Evans, but Sloan comes with that, first round caliber. And he's also just like, it feels like pitch by pitch, you look at him and it's like, okay, you're probably the best arm in this system, aren't you?
Yep. And you saw his velocity tick up as the draft got closer, started to touch closer to the upper 90s. You saw a lot of things progress nicely. When he's got a body that's almost as physically built as like a Logan Gilbert, but then also already has his polish, you put him in this organization, I think you can get really excited about the development here and what can be. This is one of the big league professional debuts that I'm as excited to see as any, and probably will be big league debut too when that time comes. Number 5. Sorry.
I'm not gonna agree with. I said that, like, I'm fired up to see this guy's professional debut. It was Charlie Soto, and Charlie Soto drastically underwhelmed this year. So I'm not gonna give Ryan Sloan that curse from me.
You were in attendance for the pro debut, though. Technically speaking, it wasn't an organized game setting.
Yeah,
it was that spring breakout with the family there rooting along. He got better from there. And it got a little bit better as the year progressed. But yeah, that was a guy that I know we had circled for the pro debut and maybe jinxed it a little bit. So yeah, we'll temper down the Ryan Sloan pro debut hype, but I think it's going to go pretty well. Yeah. Number 5, Felnin Celesten. So we talked about it before we recorded, like the top 5 guys. We're not going to add a ton here because we've talked so much about these players. If you're finding us for the first time on YouTube or whatever it may be, I promise you we will be talking about these guys a lot more because they're all top 100 prospects. So when we do the 2025 top 100 list, all that good stuff, like we're going to be detailing a lot more. We're more focusing on just kind of what they did to maybe adjust their stock, so to speak, or if it was kind of status quo and why. For Celesten, we wrote him up, going into last year, and it was, off of just a lot of video that we could get and limited data and all that good stuff because he dealt with a hamstring injury that delayed his pro debut. And then this past year, he dealt with a wrist issue that apparently the Mariners said was from before, that was kind of nagging him. But finally he got it taken care of. This was a blue chip IFA guy, right? $4.7 million in 2023, and for good reason. He's a switch hitter with plus power and speed potential. And I think has good tools at shortstop, has a chance to stick there. But if he moves to third, he can handle that move in terms of the power and the offensive ability. We saw even in the 32 games he played before getting hurt that the offensive ability as well. The swings are still pretty raw from both sides. Like he really gets hiked up there, and it's a huge leg kick, and he kind of jumps at the ball, but his hands are so quick, and it's still such a tight turn despite being a little bit mechanically inefficient, that he makes it work enough now. He's going to have to clean some things up, I think. But in terms of the natural talent, it's crazy. We saw him pulverize baseballs already. And he finished the year, I think, 11 for 15 before the wrist issue was just too much and he finally got it taken care of. But, I mean, this guy has as much upside as anybody at the complex. So we talk about Jesus Mate and those types, like they're there as well. But like Celesten is not far off and in the same conversation with those types.
Yeah, I have literally nothing to add on Felnin Celesten other than what I've read you write, and I'm like, you know what, I'm in. As soon as I see this guy play more than 40 games in a given season, I'm ready to go. And he's only had one opportunity to do so. Here's to hoping he's healthy in 2025, and we're seeing, him at the complex, and we'll see how quickly they want to push him. Obviously, AJ Preller is not the head honcho there, so I don't think he's getting a AA in 2025. But a 27 ETA is exciting to see with a guy like this.
No doubt. And I think the last thing on him is just the mechanics being a little bit out of whack has resulted in an elevated ground ball rate. The number one thing I'm looking at next year is, can he hit the ball in the air more consistently? If he does that, he could be like the breakout guy this coming season. Laz Montes, he did everything you wanted to see, right? I mean, he mashed this year. The defense it got better, which is not saying much, but it got to the point where, like, okay, he might be able to go out there and make the routine catches, and that's all you really need him to do. Ultimately, I think he's best served as a DH, but regardless, it's going to be all about the bat. Contact rates weren't great, but he hedged that with the ability to hit the ball hard, which we already knew. And in the air, though, that was the big separator. He cut the ground ball rate by like 12% this year. And in doing that, 21 home runs in 115 games, and the approach getting to where it's at, where he only chased 20% of the time, that allowed him to get on base at a 397 clip. Like, again, he did everything you wanted to see. And I think you got to feel good about where he's headed, especially against righties. He slashed 309, 408, 521 against righties with a 22% K rate. So I think against right-handed pitching, if this is a guy that you end up sheltering a little bit from lefties, he could just be a righty destroyer. But I think he has the ability to be able to hit both. Another guy that could probably clean some things up in the box a bit. Like there's a lot of moving parts for such a big body, but the fact that he's able to manage them already to a degree, I think says a lot about his just ability to hit for how big and, physically mature he is.
Yeah, we were on FaceTime yesterday. Really moment for Aram. I asked Aram for Lazaro Montes' career OPS in the minor leagues, and he was like, "Oh, I don't know, 870." No, dude, 940, 291, 414, 526 slash 940 OPS in 240 minor league games. Like like we said it with Arroyo, like masher until proven not with Lazaro Montes, and he's every single at this point.
Yeah, and he's doing it at 19 years old, right? Like he was 19 for the entirety of last season, doing what he did between low and high. It's just wild to see that and really maintaining it through high and multi-homer games, 4-hit games. Like he seems to be able to hedge the whiff enough. And again, the big thing that stood out to me was with such long levers, those guys sometimes struggle to get the ball in the air. For him to make that leap in terms of hitting the ball in the air, I think was absolutely massive. And as the EVs, continue to, because the EVs dropped a little bit because I think the focus was more path. If the EVs continue to come back to where they were the year before with those angles, he could be a 30 home run guy in the minors next year.
Yeah.
Number 3, Cole Young, another guy that not a ton changed. He made a mechanical adjustment that I didn't love. It did come with some decent results. So, who am I? But he starts with his hands really low now. And I think where he's at and where he gets slotted makes it really hard to turn the barrel back for the top of the zone. And I think that got exposed a little bit, but it did help him stay ready and be able to just throw his hands at the baseball. And he was able to spray the ball all over the field and did a good job of that. There's another guy with, plus plate discipline and above average runner. I think the defense at short, like it's interesting because his footwork is great. And I saw that this year, but the arm strength just didn't come along at all. And that's what I was hoping for. It's a fringy arm. So he really needs to get the ball out quick. And I think he gets it out quick enough and has good enough fundamentals to get by at shortstop. But I think it's ultimately going to be that second base profile where he's going to be a comfortably above average defender. So you have above average hit, above average defense there, and plus plate discipline. That's going to help a lot. But I didn't love the mechanical shift that he had, because I think it does limit his ability to hit the ball hard, and is more kind of like spray it all over, which is fine. He can be that guy. But yeah, it's going to be interesting to see, because again, stuff at the top of the zone really started to hurt him. And in the top third, his OPS dropped by 200 points after making the mechanical change on pitches in the top third of the zone. So, I mean, if he hits everything else, he's fine, and the plate discipline works. So maybe this is what he leans into. But just something to monitor there. That said, I think he's going to be an OBP guy, plenty of doubles. If he's playing above average defense at second base, he could end up being their option at second base, sooner rather than later.
Yeah. Over the course of the last year, from when you updated this previously, which was, I think, before the 24 season, I feel like, when you look at like the AP top 25, when you go to the actual article, when you see the top 25, you see like a down arrow in red, a green, or an up arrow in green, or like just a yellow dash, like, they stay in the same place. It feels like Young had that yellow dash next to him compared to this previous update, and 2 and 1 had the green up arrows. Like it's not, oh, Cole Young got worse. He didn't progress at as steep of an incline as 2 and 1 did.
Yeah. And I think that's just kind of who he is. I think I was hoping that the arm strength would come along a little bit more, and then maybe, he was popping 110s early on, like a couple, and maybe he'll, even though he's not huge, like could tap into a little bit more power. The mechanical shift the other way, I think will hold him back from being able to tap into a little bit more. But if it allows him to just throw his hands at the ball and spray, like that's who he is, might elevate the floor, might lower the ceiling a little bit. And he could be just that above average second baseman who hits plenty of doubles and walks. And I think that's probably what he looks like. But the top two guys for me, as you mentioned, just a lot more upside and I think impact in more important positions. And I know Jonny Farmelo at number 2 here is a guy that maybe isn't ranked as high because he's coming off a torn ACL. But for me, like, until proven otherwise, I'm going to assume he comes back. I mean, we see guys come back from these ACLs all the time now. And I'd be a little bit more concerned if it was his left ACL, right? His back knee, because then especially with his move that he has in the box, he likes to sink into that backside. Like, that could be a problem, being able to stay into it and get into it if it's not feeling healthy. It's his right knee. It would seem like a fluke thing in the outfield. It took a weird, slip kind of, and it buckled on him. But what he was showing in the beginning of the year was enough for me to say, okay, this guy has clear-cut impact on both sides of the ball, with a good approach, with power to dream on, where I think this guy just can be more dynamic than a lot of these other players in the system outside of Colt Emerson at number 1. So you have plus speed. If he comes back a little bit slower, then okay, it's plus speed, but I don't think he's going to come back slower. You have above average power to dream on. You have good plate discipline. And I think the bat to ball was severely underrated as an amateur. He also made some changes to make that swing less rigid and everything. And I just think he showed enough in that pro debut to be very excited for when he comes back, presumably around June. And I think, depending on how much rust there is to shake off, I think this is a guy that absolutely is going to start to really fly up the prospect rankings with the skill set that he has.
It feels like he's the freakish talent in the Mariners system. And I know that you've got Pete, who, clearly has a lot of tools and all that, but it didn't, click in a way that, was overly freaky. Like, oh, this guy can be, next level awesome. Like, with Farmelo, it feels like he could be next level freak talent, that kind of thing. And like the floor seems, I don't want to say the floor seems high. It's just like he does everything in a way that, makes you think that he's an all-around player. Like, he's got an all-around game, but he elevates in certain ways that make him exciting and make him, box office.
I mean, an above average defender in center field at least, and then walking at a good clip, and then 88% in zone contact rate for a guy who had hit tool concerns, who also pulls the ball in the air, 35% ground ball rate. I'm going to buy into that. With his skill set already producing those batted ball markers, that's something for me that I look at and I'm like, okay, even a 38.5% hard hit rate, like, he's going to grow into more strength. And I assume coming back from this ACL, like, his entire lower half is going to be stronger. I imagine he's going to be getting after it and getting himself in a good spot there. I think he's gonna come back looking good, and just the skill set with the hit being way better than anybody expected, and the approach, sub 20% chase rate. It's a really well-rounded profile that I think can impact the game in a lot of different ways.
Yeah.
Last but not least, Not a ton that changed here with Colt Emerson, but still a very fun prospect that I think continues to just elevate himself the more people get to see. We got to see him in the Arizona Fall League, so we talked about him a bit there too. I think the defense at shortstop is one of the things that has stood out to me the most because he is viewed as a candidate that can move off of it to third base. But I think what he has been able to do over the last year to progress fundamentally, instincts wise, just movement wise, he looks like he can be a really solid defender there. And even if it's just average, there's a chance that, once he gets to the big league level, he'll move off of that spot for a better defender, just someone that's a little bit more, stand out there. But the fact that he has gotten himself to a point where, like, I think he could very well be at least an average defender at shortstop helps a ton. But he is an above average arm. And I think even with the defense progress he's made there, you put him at third, he can be a well above average arm. But you saw the approach just continue to stand out with him. Another guy that doesn't chase at all. The EVs I want to see creep in a bit more, but is another guy that was banged up again. And that seems to be the theme, is kind of like a litany of small injuries here. Want to see him stay healthy, but above average feel to hit, above average power to dream on, plus plate discipline, and he can stay on the left side of the infield. That's the top prospect in this system.
Yeah, no doubt. And like, he was so good in the Fall League. I know that, we were watching him, we get out there and it's like, everything that he did just felt way smoother than a 19-year-old should look, or a 20-year-old should look, yada, yada. And that was the case in low A. That was the case in the Fall League. That's going to be the case in high A. Yeah, I assume he starts in high A this year, and then he gets to double. Like, it just feels like he is surely one of the top 20 prospects in Major League Baseball. Do you feel like he's in early teens, late teens? Is that a fair ballpark? In March?
I think so. I think potentially late teens. The only thing I want to see a little bit more from him is elevating more. He's a very rhythmic hitter, and so he likes to kind of get that leg up early, and it's a slow hand load. I like that, but what comes with that is a need for lower half control and balance, and he's still working to, okay, I get my leg up early, I'm loading early, I can stay back. And I think at times he can kind of get pulled forward with good secondaries and things like that. As he learns to stay back, we've seen him flash the ability to shoot balls the other way with authority, and then flash above average power to the pull side. When he starts elevating more, 51% ground ball rate this past year, when he starts elevating more, he's going to tap into more power as well and more EVs also. I think he could skyrocket into the potential top 10 range because of the feel to hit and the approach. Wow. And the ability to stick on the left side of the infield. So another guy that I'm circled in this organization where it's get the ball in the air more. Still just 19 years old. He won't turn 20 until after the All-Star break.
Yeah, wow.
That'll do it for this episode, this update on the Mariners system. Hope you enjoyed it. Again, we'll talk more about these top guys as the offseason progresses and as we get into the top 100, which we will be putting out as the season gets closer. But we will continue to update all of these farm system rankings. You can keep up with that with the team top prospect rankings on justbaseball.com. We'll have the most recent published date next to that. Also, keep an eye out for early next week, an interview with Sean Reynolds, former hitter, now pitcher, and was phenomenal at the big league level for the Padres. Jack, any final thoughts?
I know what you got your girlfriend for Christmas. The ad feed that we were getting on baseball.com through all this was great. So you see that, which I'm sure you were clicking through. Nice jewelry. And then I see you were looking at some flights as well. So no, this was good. It was good to just kind of monitor all the ads that were popping up in the course of this.
Yeah, I'm basically telling on myself now every time we do these screen shares with the ads I'm getting served. But no, it's also, as a reminder there, linked in the episode description, so you can go check out the writing or the write-ups there, and then see what ads get served to you.
See what ads you get.
That'll do it. I hope you have an awesome weekend, and we will talk prospects with you next week.